Perfect. All right, so welcome everyone to this information session on being on the Board of Trustees for the Council for Learning Disabilities. I'm Joe Morgan. I'm the current president of the Council for Learning Disabilities and an associate professor of special education at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And with me today, I have the presidential line of the Council for Learning Disabilities for the 2021-2022 academic year. So I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. So Dr. Hott, as past president, if you'd like to go.
Hi, I'm Brittany Hott. I'm an associate professor at the University of Oklahoma, and I'm immediate past president of the Council for Learning Disabilities.
Great. And Dr. Barrio?
Hello, everybody. My name is Brenda Barrio, and I am an associate professor of special education at the University of North Texas and the president-elect.
Awesome. Dr. Flores?
Hi, I'm Margaret Flores. I'm a professor of special education at Auburn University, and I'm the vice president.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Can you see the screen or the presenter notes? The screen? Okay, there are
Yes.
there are no presenter notes, but I know it's distracting when you can see the presenter notes. So good. Well, welcome everybody, and we're so grateful to be here. We're so grateful that you're here, and we're so grateful to chat with you all about being a leader in the Council for Learning Disabilities. So the point of today's session is to talk a little bit about pathways that you might consider if you're interested in serving in leadership capacities within our organization. And we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to tell you all what the process is for becoming a leader in the organization, and give folks an opportunity to ask and answer any questions that you might have about potential pathways into leadership roles in a variety of different capacities. We each have a section of this presentation, and we have Dr. Flores is going to share some insight as the most recent elected member of the presidential line on how she navigated her way through a variety of leadership capacities in CLD. But if each of us, as we take our section, I'm springing this on them, but if you want to just chat a little bit about the things that you did prior to serving in your presidential role in the organization, just to kind of give an overall flavor of how folks arrived at their leadership capacities, I think that might be good to show the different ways that people engaged in leadership within the organization. So we've done the introductions. Overall, what we're going to talk about at the beginning, I'm going to cover some ways that you can serve as a leader within the Council for Learning Disabilities. Dr. Hott is going to talk specifically about elected service as a member of the executive committee. Dr. Flores is going to talk about things that she did in her way towards the presidential line within leadership opportunities. Dr. Barrio is going to talk about upcoming chair appointments in the next 2 years and things to think about as you get prepared, or as we prepare to seek nominations for those chair appointments. And then we'll close with questions from you. And so, as I indicated, my name's Joe Morgan. I've been involved with the Board of Trustees for the Council for Learning Disabilities since 2012. I served as the Technology Committee co-chair from 2012 until 2018, when I was elected as the vice president of CLD. And also during that time, I served as the LD Forum editor. So I served 2 terms as the editor of LD Forum, which is an application process. I put in my paperwork and was selected to serve in that capacity. And then I've been in the vice president, president-elect, and now presidential positions on the executive committee. So I've had the great opportunity to see CLD leadership from a variety of different lenses as I've gone throughout the last decade with the organization. And so to talk a little bit more about what some of those potential opportunities are for leadership pathways in the organization, as we prepared for this conversation, we wanted to highlight 3 main things. There's often some question about how do you enter your name for consideration for chair appointments on the Board of Trustees. And so we want to ensure that that message is transparent and that everybody knows how we kind of select chairs and what's the process of getting engaged with leadership within the organization. So as we kind of chatted about recommendations or thoughts that current members might have if they're interested in leadership, we kind of broke it down into kind of 3 stages of leadership as a part of CLD. And so one of them, first and foremost, is to be a member and actively engaged in committee work in the Council for Learning Disabilities. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you can get engaged in that committee work if you're not already engaged, and things to think about as a member of that particular committee that might set you up to be in the chain to become a member of the Board of Trustees at some point in the future. The second part of that then is, once you're engaged, is to then serve in leadership capacities, whether that's in your state chapter or on a national committee. And then finally, it would be putting your name forward for consideration for committee chair appointments for the role of on the board of trustees. And I'll talk a little bit about each one of those categories now. And so overall, the first and most important thing we want to let people know about potential committee chairs on the board of trustees is most of our committee chairs come directly from the committees that we're looking to appoint committee chairs from. I think there's often some question about how we find names of people who might be great committee chairs. The first place that we go to is people who are on the committee, who know the committee, who are working on the committee, who then can step into a role to help organize and ensure that the functionality of the committee maintains. And so our first recommendation, if you're interested in serving in a leadership capacity on the board of trustees, is to actively get engaged in one of our organizational committees. We know several folks are members of committees, but when we talk about engagement, it really is finding ways to be meaningfully engaged in the meetings, in the work product of the committee, in the initiatives of the committee, et cetera. And so I've listed here all of the committees that are available for the Council for Learning Disabilities. If you're already on one, great. If you're not on one or you want to explore one or two other committees, we encourage you, if you have the opportunity to attend the conference in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks, to find the committee schedules and to make time to go sit in on those committee meetings, learn more about the functionality of the committee, et cetera. Because one thing that we often do is we go to the current committee chairs and say, do you have great members on your committee who you think are ready to step into the role of committee chair on the board of trustees? And so if you're actively involved, actively engaged in the committee, that is one way that your name comes forward as a potential opportunity. If you're not able to come or there's meeting times that conflicts, we encourage you to contact the chairs. We'll send this PowerPoint out afterwards, and that it links directly to the committee chair website on the CLD website. All of our committee chairs are open and willing to ask questions or answer questions, talk to you about the functionality of the committees, et cetera. And when you're there, we encourage you to volunteer for a subcommittee. Several of our committees do special activities. The research committee, for example, did the methods exchanges last June. So volunteering to get those scheduled, to serve as moderators, to do those types of things as the committee work. Those are all great activities to kind of let the leadership know that you're interested in serving in some of those leadership capacities as you go on. The other thing we encourage you as a member of the committee is to propose new ideas. If you've got a new thought, you've got a new program, you've got a new something that you'd like to implement, we'd love to hear it and then work with you to be able to implement those things. So our first recommendation is really to find a way to be actively involved in a committee and to be engaged and to really be a member of what's happening related to that work. Or if you live in a place that has a state chapter, we encourage you to get involved in the state chapters that exist throughout the Council for Learning Disabilities. A list of active state chapters can be found on our website, but there are also lots of opportunities to get started in your leadership roles within the organization at the state and local level, and to serve on conference committees for local convenings of CLD members, to run for office at your state board, and to be able to help make CLD decisions related to that state chapter. The second thing that we then encourage you to do is to step into some of those pseudo leadership roles on your committees, whether those are official leadership roles on the boards or executive committees of your state and local chapters, or to run subcommittees on the national organization. Many of our committees have subcommittee chairs that take over particular activities throughout the year. So for example, on the technology committee, there's a role called the social media coordinator that ensures that our messaging is being pushed out on Twitter and Pinterest and I think TikTok. I don't really understand TikTok, but I'm sure we're on TikTok. And so to make sure that our message about the organization and the work of our members is being pushed out to social media. Conference Planning Committee is an excellent example of a committee that's got several subcommittees that work throughout the year on advertising and sponsorships and ensuring that everything is ready to go for the annual conference. So there are lots of opportunities to serve in leadership capacities on the committee without being a committee chair that get you to really learn the ins and outs of some of the leadership responsibilities of the Board of Trustees. You also can serve in your state chapters and running for office. I mentioned that, but that's another great way to step into leadership and kind of get involved in the operations of the Council for Learning Disabilities. Once you've done those things, and I continue to talk about these other activities because I want to reiterate, one of the main ways that we determine folks who would be great committee chairs as these openings populate are folks who have been involved in the work of the committee, because there are a lot of complexities of what's happening related to the activities, tasks that get done annually. And so one thing is if you've got experience working on those particular committees, we know then as the executive committee and board of trustees that you are familiar with the workings of that particular committee, and that we can have a seamless transition into ensuring the work of the organization is occurring across throughout the governance of the committee structures. So if you are interested in serving on a committee chair role, as those positions open across years, here's kind of the role of what a committee chair does on the board of trustees. And so the committee chair ensures that their committee's activities are accomplished in the timeline that's outlined in our governing documents. And then they also serve as a member of the board of trustees. And the board of trustees of CLD consists of all of the committee chairs, the executive committee, and our executive director. And what the board of trustees does is we are the guards of the organization, and we ensure that the organization is financially healthy, that our activities are occurring, that our name is being involved in conversations that are critical for the outcomes of students with learning disabilities and their families. And we advise on the overall structures and operations of the organization itself. So as a committee chair, you are an important voice on the board of trustees to be a steward of our professional organization and to make sure that we maintain health and wellness, membership, advocacy, and we're doing all the right things to change the outcomes of the populations of kids that we serve. And so globally, the way that you can become a committee chair is that the president-elect each year has the opportunity to name the committee chairs or to put forward names for committee chairs for full board of trustees vote for appointment for the following academic year. So Dr. Barrio is going to talk at the end about some of the openings that are coming up across the next couple of years. But ultimately, Dr. Barrio will develop a process to name committee chairs that she then puts forward to the board of trustees for a full vote. And then once you're named as a committee chair, many of our committees have co-chair positions. All of the chair, co-chair positions are listed in the governing documents of the organization. Most of those committees have a 3-year appointment. So if you're named to a committee chair position, it's for a 3-year term. Outside of the conference planning committee, the conference planning committee is a 4-year term as committee chair to keep continuity of our conferences and ensure that we're doing, because if you've never served on conference planning committee, it is a large, robust process that happens, and we're always planning 3 conferences at a time. So we keep them around for a little bit longer to make sure that everybody knows what's going on with the conference, because it's quite the endeavor to learn how to do that particular process. Okay, good. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hott, who will talk a little bit more then about once you've served in some of these other leadership capacities, if you're interested in running for elected office as a member of the executive committee of the board of trustees.
Okay, so within the board of trustees, there is an executive committee, and that executive committee consists of the president, president-elect, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and immediate past president. And so the secretary serves a 3-year term, the treasurer 3 years, and the vice president actually works through a 4-year term where they serve 1 year as vice president and conference chair, president-elect, then moving into the president role, and finally into immediate past president. And within each one of those years, the duties are slightly different. And so to run for office, the nomination and election committee is charged with, according to our bylaws, soliciting names for the offices of vice president, treasurer, and secretary. And this year we do have open treasurer and vice president. And so the qualifications are, sorry, Joe. The qualifications are you must be a member of a standing committee or a board of trustees member at the national level, or part of the executive committee of an affiliated chapter. The secretary doesn't have to meet these qualifications, but the treasurer and the vice presidential candidates do. If you're interested in running for office, please send me an email. We would love to have a conversation and to get you the candidate form that needs to be completed so that we can facilitate that process. The petition for nomination for CLD officers form is due on or before the CLD business meeting You have to get that form in the nomination and election committee in collaboration with the executive director, verify that you have 5 signatures of active members. Then following the conference, you go on the ballot and you'll begin your service in July 1 of that following year, should you be elected.
Thank you, Dr. Hott. And I should have asked you at the beginning, but could you share just your overall trajectory as a leader in the organization? Because I know you've served in a variety of capacities as well.
Absolutely. And you did tell us to do that, and I did not follow directions as usual.
It's okay. I sprung it on you at the end, so don't worry.
Hey, it's cool. So I began as a member of CLD during my doctoral program back in 2010. Peggy King Sears was my advisor. She's a past president of CLD and has been involved for years. I was a member of the inaugural Leadership Academy with Beverly Weiser, who's our current treasurer, with Kat Fanistel, who is our current communications committee chair. And after that training and experience and mentorship, I co-chaired the Leadership Development Committee and then was elected as secretary and was later elected as vice president. I helped with LD Forum during my doctoral program. Kathy Thomas was the editor at the time, and so I was her assistant editor. I edited the 5 Ways manuscripts. I helped get articles in the template, and so that was a really nice experience that helped with writing. It helped be part of the team, get in the CLD family, and I'm now immediate past president. So that's my journey. I guess 12 years went by really fast.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Hott. So now we'll hear more in depth from Dr. Flores about how she has navigated her way through member to chair to vice presidency within the organization. So Dr. Flores, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So I started out in CLD, not knowing very much about the organization at all. I came to Auburn University as a new faculty member, and Carrie Dunn was my colleague, and she was the president-elect when I first started. Then she moved into president, and we all came to the CLD conference in support of Carrie. And so that's where I found this new group of folks. I had only really been involved in CEC prior to that. And so I just started out going to conferences, being a member, and I guess a few years in, someone asked if I wanted to be on the research committee, and that sounded fine. That sounded like a neat thing. So I went to the committee meeting at lunch during the conference, got on board, followed directions, reviewed awards and other things. When there was extra things to do, I volunteered to help out. We were kind of a small-ish committee. So there was a lot to do at times because we didn't have very, very many of us. And so really, then I got an email invitation, would I like to be the committee chair? And I thought, okay, how hard could this be? We make some awards. So what has changed since then is the process. We have a co-chair now, because what I found was that simple yes, I had no idea what I was saying yes to. And not that it was, very difficult. It was just things I didn't know about. So it's kind of a big I have to do this, and there are steps and procedures and a kind of a little process. And you spend about a month each year, pretty busy. And then mostly, not so much. It's pretty chill. But I wasn't quite prepared for that first round of award processes. So we, the board changed the bylaws and added a co-chair position for the committee. And so this really, I guess this is where my insight is, because now someone asked me, okay, who would you recommend on the committee, to to the president. And so really what I thought of, and as someone who's on a committee, I thought, okay, who responds to emails? Who accomplishes tasks like within the given timeline? Who seems, who comes to our meetings and our other activities? And I also thought, who might have time for this? I thought, and this is not a requirement, but it was a part of my thought process. I thought, who has tenure? Because when you have all the other things going on, maybe devoting 4 weeks to this might not be great for your writing, research, other things. It is a big chunk of service that maybe you may or may not have time for. So that was my thought process, is who are the people I might put forward is folks who participate, are easy to work with, and potentially are in a position to have time for that kind of service. And so in my working as committee chair, going to conferences, I helped out with other things here and there. I got to know people, which I'm supposing is why someone sent an email a year or so ago and asked, do you want to run for vice president? And so that was a lot to think about, but I thought, yeah, sure. And I thought, well, I'm running with a bunch of other people, it's not like I'm saying yes, I'm just saying yes to an election. It's probably not going to happen. So then I'll just, move along and keep being committee chair. And so, but yeah, that's the thing about elections. So I unexpectedly became the vice president. So I've just kind of fallen into most of my roles in CLD. But on the other hand, there has been active participation, meeting people, getting to know lots of different folks around different parts of the organization, helping out with Leadership Institute and other kinds of things has introduced me to folks that I might not have just ordinarily run into because we share a research interest and I would have gone to their presentation, those kinds of things. So meeting as many people as you can and, forming networks, I think would be helpful in your trajectory. But I have to say, I did not have any thoughtful plan for how I came to this place. It was a sort of accidental, but I think that my behaviors along the way helped the happy accidents happen. So I think that's my story.
I think there's a t-shirt there, Dr. Flores. I think there is. Awesome. Thank you so much. And so the last part of the formal presentation is I will turn it over to Dr. Barrio to share a little bit about the upcoming chair appointments as they come. And if you could chat a little bit about your trajectory as well, and just how you got involved before you get into the chair appointments, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Flores. That was a good, huge smile on my face, as it is a nice accident for sure. So we're very happy to have you in the presidential line. So my journey with CLD started in around 2010 as well, just like Dr. Hod's. But I was a master's student, and I was studying under Dr. Bertina Combs. Late Bertina Combs back then. And, she shared about CLD. CLD then was here in Dallas. Actually, the conference was in Dallas. So she said, hey, you should, put a proposal. We should just come join me. I was teaching at the same time. So I thought, okay, why not, professional development that is actually targeted to special education. So I sent the proposal, got accepted, went for a day. And loved it, right? So once I started my PhD, I started going regularly. We used to have a committee called the Ethics and Standards Committee, which Bertina was the chair back then. So I was pretty involved in that. Of course, that is no longer a committee. But I was also part of the membership committee and the diversity committee. Of course, my work is really on the cultural pieces of and diversity pieces of special education. So I was leaning towards the diversity committee a lot, and that's when I get an email, encouraging me to, be the chair for the diversity committee. I agreed to it, and I served from 2017 to 2020 when I decided to run for vice president. Similarly to everybody else, got an email and a phone call saying, hey, you should run for VP. I was like, sure. It's something for sure that I had considered, perhaps not right away because I was pre-tenure, but it was something that I envisioned within the organization for sure. So just like everybody else as well, I had already made a lot of connections, had put in a lot of hours with the LAC, the Local Arrangements Committee in Portland, for example, part of committees and doing a lot of extra, just different tasks around the organization. And I really believed in the mission and vision of it. So yeah, I said, why not? Got elected, and here I am. So I'm very excited about it, and just happy to be the upcoming or the incoming president-elect. And chair of the conference, which is a lot, especially in the middle of a pandemic. I had mass respect for everybody that has done the conference chairing. And Joe did a great job last year with the virtual conference. This year is just totally different. And it's a totally, it's a really, really big task, but it's been fun. It's exciting. It's wild all at the same time, but I'm very, very glad that I'm doing this. So Joe, we can move on into so I can talk a little bit more about the upcoming chair appointments. So 2022, the following 3-year terms are up. The technology co-chair, again, we're staggering a lot of the co-chairs, so they are not starting at the same time, and then people don't know what in the world's happening, right? So at least there is somebody that is aware of the continuation of the work. And of course, we're hoping to bring fresh ideas to a lot of these new positions, right? So technology co-chair, the leadership co-chair, membership, and research, they're all up in 2022. So I will be, providing those names, moving those names forward for us to consider. And then in 2023, Dr. Flores will be, moving forward diversity. Diversity only has one chair, so there's that. Yunru is doing an amazing job right now, but her term is up. And then conference planning co-chair, the other leadership co-chair, the other technology co-chair, the other membership co-chair, and the other research co-chair. So there is going to be only 1 year overlap for those that are coming in. But I think that's, that's plenty within the organization to know what is going on. So let's see, the process of that is, so again, nomination by current chair or somebody in the EC or the BOT members. Yeah, you're gonna have to help me out. It's Friday afternoon, Joe, so please put all of them in there. Thank you. Of course, active participation, as Joe was mentioning, and then the nomination is moved to the EC and the BOT for vetting and voting. But we're trying to really try to come up with a more streamlined and transparent process. There's a lot of behind the scenes throwing names and things like that. We're really trying to make it as streamlined and transparent as we can, so everybody in the organization has an equal chance to make sure that if they want to serve, that they can do so, right? We're also being very intentional about the diversification of the BOT. And this is something that, I think all of us in the presidential line are very much focusing on. And so we're going to try to make some suggestions and to revising some of those processes. So again, people can have access and it could be equitable and diverse as well. So I don't know if I have another slide. I don't think I have another slide. Do I? Oh, there we go. So thank you.
Wonderful. Excellent. Well, thank you all. And I'm going to, I'll end the formal part of the presentation and then we'll stop the recording and I'll answer any questions that folks have. But thank you for attending. And what we encourage our current live viewers, anybody who watches this later on, whether it's the CLD conference this year or Richmond next year, depending on when you're watching it, we encourage you to come get to know folks on the current board of trustees, on the executive committee, in the committee structures, et cetera. And ask questions about the organization if you're interested in leadership. I'm reading a great book, and I heard the theme across all of us is the state those intentions sometimes. And even if you don't know, it might be a happy accident, but if you're willing to do it and letting people know that you are, that's one great way to kind of find your way into leadership positions within this organization. We always remind people we are a volunteer organization and all servant leaders to this. And so it is having a healthy pipeline of diverse views and diverse experiences on our board is what's going to keep CLD in its role as a leading advocate on behalf of kids with learning disabilities and their families. And so we're excited for your potential interest and excited to work with you on figuring out what those next pathways might be. So with that, I'll close the formal part of the presentation.